All right. So thank you everyone for being here. Thank you to the students, but in particular, we're really fortunate to have a few panelists here today for our International Affairs Alumni panel, both Tim Davis and Kathleen DeSantis. Am I saying that right?
Perfect, yeah.
Awesome. So really fortunate to have them here today to discuss careers in international affairs and address a lot of questions, or I guess some questions regarding their career path and their day-to-day responsibilities and, different advice they might have for you, as well as industry trends and challenges. And so, I'm going to start the session and kick it off by asking a handful of questions relevant to those topics. But I want to heavily encourage the students to ask questions during this session. So what we'll do is we'll kick it off for at least the first half of the session with those questions. And then we'll allot time in the latter half for the students to ask questions. So you're welcome to put it in the chat. But I would also encourage you to, at that time, just ask yourself and maybe unmute, turn your camera on if you can, to connect with the panelists and ask any questions you have. So I'll start with quick introductions on our end, and then I'll pass it along to Kathleen and Tim to start with the first question and introduction. So I know many of the students on the call, but for those of you who don't know me, I'm Ashley Dwyer, and I'm the Director of Career Services and Employee Relations here at Rockefeller College. And I'm joined by my colleague, Christina Cardona, so I just want to give her a chance to introduce herself.
Thanks, Ashley. Hi, everyone. My name is Christina Cardona, and I'm the coordinator for internships and career programming here at Rockefeller College.
Awesome. So let's kick it off with the first question, and whoever wants to start. Oh, here's Erin. Perfect. So we'll let Erin in and let her get acclimated for a moment, and then we'll kick it off. Hi there, Erin. I think you're muted. Oh, there we are. Hi, Erin. Can you hear me? I don't know if we can hear you. I can't hear you. Yeah, take a moment here, and I'm going to add you to the spotlight. Join the crew here. Take a moment. And maybe what I can do is I'll start with the first question for Tim and Kathleen, and whenever you're ready, you can jump in, Erin. Awesome. Thank you for being here, all of you. So to start off, can you just introduce yourself, share a little bit about your current role, including what maybe like a typical day looks like or what your role entails? So whoever wants to get us started, either Kathleen or Tim.
Happy to kick off.
Awesome. Thank you.
Hi, everyone. I'm Kathleen DeSantis. I am currently the lead manager for member relations and engagement for British American Business. We are the leading transatlantic trade association looking after the US-UK economic corridor. So as a lead manager, a lot of my day-to-day entails working with a lot of our member companies. So we have a membership base of over 500 companies between New York, London, and an office in DC. Our membership ranges from probably 60% large multinationals to about 30% smaller, medium-sized enterprises, SMEs. And companies will join my organization for mainly three reasons. Our first is our policy function, mostly led out of our office in DC. We are constantly welcoming governors, ministers, trade delegations to New York and DC. Just last week, I welcomed a trade delegation from the Glasgow Chamber of Commerce. So it's a lot of prospecting, seeing which companies might need our support. In terms of policy, we're not a lobbying organization, but if there's a topic that's top of mind to transatlantic businesses, we're likely to address that through our programming. We also encourage trade and investment between the US and UK. So if you're a US business, we want you to go to England. And if you're a UK business, we want you to come to the US. That's what kind of sets us apart from organizations that are maybe just solely focused on UK inbound investment. And then our members will mostly join us for our convening power. So we put on over 120 events a year between our offices, everything from bespoke roundtables. We just put an emergency briefing on last week on trade tariffs. Obviously, that is a big focus for our companies at the moment. So yeah, that's pretty much my day-to-day, cross policy, trade and investment advocacy, and networking events. I'll stop there.
So, hi everyone, I'm Tim. I'm a lead cyber threat intelligence analyst over at the Center for Internet Security, which is in East Greenbush, New York. That's just a little bit to the east of Albany, New York. So typical day for me involves monitoring the current cyber threat landscape for new trends, new techniques, what are the bad guys doing out there, and then helping to create intelligence products for our members and send them out. So the Center for Internet Security is a nonprofit that houses an organization called the Multi-State Information Sharing and Analysis Center, MSISAC. Yes, it is partially government funded because I've been here for like a minute and I've already thrown like 3 acronyms at you. So yeah, a lot of government stuff. But we work with federal partners like the Department of Homeland Security, the Federal Bureau of Investigation, and that's part of my day-to-day is liaising with our federal partners to create intelligence products. We also liaise with our international intelligence organizations because cybercrime is an international problem. And so working closely with our international partners, we're able to push out actionable information to our members. We have over 18,000 members across the entire United States and her territories. These range from states, localities, tribes. They run the entire gambit of governments, nonprofits as well, local hospitals. So we work with a lot of organizations to provide these no-cost services and solutions because what you find in the cyber field is a lot of organizations, they don't really have the resources they need to defend themselves. So that's where a place like us, we come in handy, is we have the funding through the federal government that we're able to provide those services and solution at no cost. And so in my role, I'm working more on the threats to provide that information for folks to hopefully defend themselves a little bit better against what's going on out there.
Excellent. I don't know if Aaron has joined us yet. Nope. Okay. I'll also go ahead and I'll share the phone number for you, Aaron. You could also join by phone if that's easier too. It's like we just had you join separately. No, that's okay. Still playing around with it. That's all right. We'll move on to the next question. No pressure, no rush. I can go ahead and share the phone number with you too, Aaron, just to see if that will work as well. Sometimes that's helpful. And you're always welcome to pop out and rejoin if that's helpful too. So moving on to the next question. So what was your path from graduation to your current position? Were there any unexpected turns or key decisions that helped shape your journey in that process? And whoever wants to kick us off.
Do you have a preference, Tim?
Go right ahead.
Okay, great, thanks. So I was in the MII program. I started January 2020, so it was definitely an interesting time to be in international affairs and also in grad school. But it was a great benefit because I was able to do a lot of different internships and get a lot of different exposure with different organizations such as the United Nations, the West Point Center for Counterterrorism, the Human Rights, the Department of Human Rights in New York State. So it really helped me kind of get my foot in the door. When I graduated, I did find that the job search was a bit difficult. I was applying crazily, and it was just kind of hard to land something. So I was able to continue my internship with the United Nations Joint Sustainable Development Goals Fund while I was searching. I did find my position at British American Business, although I interviewed for an events role. I had never done events before, but I just came to the interview. I said, you know, here's what my interests are, here's what I can bring to the table. And they actually created a position for me as a membership coordinator. And they started me off for 3 months to see how I did. And I think it went well because now I'm a lead manager. But yeah, it was definitely a little unexpected. So I think if you can, you know, get as many internships, as many letters of recommendation, people on your corner, that would definitely help a little bit throughout the job search.
So my path was a little bit odd. I graduated from the program in 2018, so I was a member of the first cohort. I actually got my first job thanks to an internship from this program. It was at a place called the National Center for Security and Preparedness, which no longer exists. But I was able to translate that internship into a full-time position, and I worked there for about 2 years. Unfortunately, that organization then lost one of its major contracts and was going to be forced to do a bunch of restructuring, which is a fancy term for layoffs. And so I decided to switch careers because I liked having a job. And I took a shot at the Center for Internet Security. I had no background in cybersecurity. I came from the International Affairs program, so I had nothing to do with cybersecurity, but I had an interest in it. It was something that I thought was fascinating, and I saw it as the next level of threats to our way of life and decided, what the heck, let's give it a try. And I was lucky enough to get a job there. My job happened to start on March 16th, 2020, which was the exact day that New York State announced that everything was shut down forever. I went to work that day, and that marks the only day that I ever actually attended in person for my current job. Everything since then has been remote. I got a tour of an empty office and told, don't worry, we'll be back in a week and everyone will be here to see you. That was 5 years ago. Haven't seen any of them since. So it was definitely a different path. It was a bit of a struggle to translate from international affairs to cybersecurity. But like I was mentioning in my opening, being able to translate the skills I learned in the program and understanding the field of cybersecurity, like so many of them these days, it's, the barriers of the world are coming down, and we have to work with international partners. We have to understand how international relations ties into something as simple as helping a small town in Kansas defend themselves because they don't understand why a foreign power is particularly interested in their hospital's local network. So trying to tie all these threads together, that's really where I was able to carve out a niche for myself there, and make myself valuable. And I've been lucky enough to be there for about 5 years. So it was definitely an odd little place that I ended up. But, I would encourage folks to think that, just because you're in one program that you may have a preconceived notion of the type of career for it, don't let that pigeonhole you into something. There's tons of careers out there that you can translate these skills to.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a very interesting start there, Tim, on March 20th. So moving on to our next question, what would you say are the skills or experiences from your time at UAlbany Rockefeller College that have been the most valuable in your career so far?
I would definitely say the career development classes and dedication that's already embedded within the program. I remember when I graduated from my undergrad program, I really didn't have any internship experience, and I wish I did have something to point to when I was searching for a full-time job post-grad. I did wish that I had maybe some more experience. So coming in from undergrad to this program, not really having anything, and then graduating and having a pretty full resume, I think, take the advice that's here, take advantage of your resources, um, you know, take a course that maybe you really don't want to take and just see if you can learn something different. I remember I hated statistics, and now I do a bunch of admin at work and I'm constantly using Excel. It's something that I really wanted to avoid. You just can't. So you need to get used to doing things that maybe are not technically within your scope or a big interest of yours, and try and make the best of it. So although I hated the statistics courses at the time, it really, I look back at my notes even, day to day, and try and see which formulas I can use to make sense of our data. And then I would say the experiences. I know when I had started the program, we had gone virtual. I know now UAlbany does a great, you know, a great effort in trying to convene their students on a regular basis, whether it be virtually or in person. Go to those happy hours, go to your professor's office hours, even if you don't have a specific question, just to pick their brain. I think that was probably the most valuable. And the professors are really accessible, so really take advantage of that.
100% echo everything Kathleen just said. I too have nightmares from statistics. Also, economics was not my favorite class. I was very, very bad at economics. Turns out I have to understand a whole lot about Bitcoin these days. So, yeah, take classes that you're not comfortable with. When you're in a career and doing things, you're going to have to do stuff you don't want to do. You're going to have to learn things that you don't know. And getting in the mindset of that now early on is really important to learn what works and what doesn't, especially now when, yes, school is important, but the stakes are a little bit lower than, say, your employment resting on the ability for you to learn a new skill. I would also say the really heavy emphasis on group work, that taught me a lot of valuable skills like, patience and working with folks, because life is a giant group project. The types of folks you deal with in group projects, you're going to deal with them your entire life. And you're never going to find a job where you 100% work by yourself all the time. You're always going to have to work with other people. For example, if you go into the field of intelligence, we need to work in groups because no one person has all the answers. You need a group, you need a diverse group of people with all of their shared experiences and knowledge and insights and ways of looking at the world to be able to give you the right answer. That's why we work with international partners. That's why we work collaboratively with so many folks, because we don't all have the answers and we need to work in group settings in order to understand that. And finally, yeah, just to really hammer home what Kathleen said, the networking in particular. I still have folks from UAlbany that I talk to. I actually work with somebody that I went to the MIA program with. He's actually my boss. That's not weird at all. And one of the professors from the program actually used to work at the company that I'm with when I started there. So, really keep those contacts. They're really invaluable, particularly in this world as you're looking for jobs and as you're looking for employment. Don't hesitate to leverage those contacts because you can use any advantage you can get, especially in this job market. So really take advantage of those.
Excellent. All good points. All right, moving on to our next question. So what would you say are some of the benefits and challenges of working? Oh, I just have a message here from Erin. I'm just seeing how we can help her. We'll move on with the question, see if I can grab her in from there. So what are some of the benefits and challenges of working in the field of international affairs, and how have you navigated them?
Lots of benefits, lots of challenges for sure. Benefits, it's exciting work. It's always changing. What is true today can be different tomorrow. So you need to be nimble. You need to be flexible. You need to adapt. The work can be rewarding. You can get exposed to a lot of different perspectives, a lot of different cultures in my work. I work with a lot of, members that are UK based or, France, Sweden. Members are always on vacation, traveling. So it's really awesome to kind of meet people where they are, but what's a pro is also a con. So, for example, my colleagues in the London office, I didn't realize that they're actually off on Friday and Monday because it's a holiday in the UK. So sometimes working cross-cultural, cross borders, makes it a little hard just logistics wise. Sometimes I need a question answered at 3 p.m. on a Friday, but everyone's logged off in the UK, so I have to wait until Monday, or in this case, Tuesday next week. I would say another benefit of working in international affairs is, the opportunity to travel, to go to different places, to just really broaden your horizon. So it gives you an opportunity to learn a lot, but you also need to be on the news and checking your phone every 5 seconds. I remember last week I was in a meeting, and was it last week, the week before, I was in a meeting and I was, asked, how's the US market looking? I said, the US is pretty positive. We've always had a good relationship with the UK. 30 minutes later, Trump had slapped 10% on the UK, 20% on the EU. And I had just told this cohort that, oh yeah, the US market's fine. Don't worry about it. So it's all about, you don't have a crystal ball, and just, it's okay to not have all the answers. But that can be hard to grapple with sometimes.
I'd say one of the most rewarding things for me is knowing that you get to make a difference on a global scale. My motivation is to defend the homeland, but it's also beneficial to be able to work with our international partners and know that we're helping to take down cybercrime networks and things based in Europe or based in Asia or Australia, and really knowing that you played a role in that. That's really, really helpful at the end of the day, especially with all of the challenges. I mean, I'll spend more time on the challenges because there are lots of them. One of the biggest ones you're going to find is that everybody has their own agenda. Yes, we're all global partners and we're all very happy to get along with each other, but everybody has an agenda. And at the end of the day, everybody wants to be the one who wins a little bit more than anyone else. So you always have to keep that in mind, that everybody wants to work, but they also want to take something home for themselves. And you have to keep that in mind when you're working with folks, that they're also looking out for themselves. Nothing wrong with that. But it's an important perspective to keep in mind. And also, yes, you will be held to account for things that you have nothing to do with. If you're working with international partners, you essentially are a representative of your country. So you're going to get questions like, what is going on in Washington today? And your answer is just, I don't know, because I just don't know. But you will have to deal with all of the changes that are going on, because they are very, very rapid these days. We are living in wildly unprecedented times. I'd really like them to stop, but they're not going to. So you have to be flexible and adaptable. For example, in my position, right now, the Department of Homeland Security is undergoing some changes. And that may impact how we work with our international partners. Right now, we're still continuing on, but it's important to keep that in mind and be able to communicate with them clearly, and understand priorities may change, actions may change, and you have to be adaptable to those as well. That's just kind of how things go. As we have seen over the past decade or so, there are wild fluctuations in international affairs. Things can quite literally change overnight. And you need to be prepared for that, and you need to be able to be that flexible to respond to those changing situations. It is a skill I did not think I was going to have to need in my own little area of the world, but you do. To give one example, one day we went to bed and everything was fine, and the next day we woke up and Russia had invaded Ukraine. And my team is scrambling to do analysis and put out reports to our members talking about how certain Russian groups may take advantage of this and start launching cyber attacks against local governments in response to the US's stance on the war. So priorities change really rapidly overnight in response to things you may not have seen coming. So it's important to remain that flexible and adaptable.
Yeah, we're absolutely living in unprecedented times, as you both mentioned. And like you said, the adaptability, flexibility is helpful. And that's life really, right? Is you're going to have things thrown at you, and it's unpredictable at times. So, as unsettling as it is, it's almost like a good practice in dealing with that in life. So I'll go ahead and ask one more question, and then we'll open it up to the students. So students, get your question prepared. Encourage you to ask any questions you might have. So what changes or trends are you seeing in the field right now? It's kind of like piggybacking off of the previous question. So what changes or trends are you seeing in the field right now, and how might they impact students entering the field moving forward?
A big one for me and my company right now is obviously tariffs. I have a lot of, I tend to specialize in the nonprofits, the SMEs, the retail operations members, and a lot of them have come to me asking, do I know what's going on? No, I really don't know what's going on. But my role is to either get them connected with members who can advise on do they need to, or was the shipment on or off the water on April 5th, or whatever it is. So the tariffs for us is a big trend, and it is impacting business. We're a membership-based organization. We are a nonprofit. The nonprofits are getting hit pretty hard right now because we're solely relying on our members' funding through membership, through our events. We're seeing a lot of members right now constricting their budgets, being a lot more conservative with their budgets, and it's making us think about what can we offer as an organization to these members that are having concerns like this. So yeah, it's a lot. I'll stop there. I could speak all day.
I think one of the biggest changes and trends is, I mean, the entire international order is essentially being turned over on its head multiple times a day. How our relations are with, say, our northern neighbor are fine at 8 a.m. and they're maybe not so good at 5 p.m. Everything is just topsy-turvy right now. Eventually, it's going to stabilize. Things always do end up coming sort of back to quasi-normal. We have been through very, very choppy waters as a country and as a world before. We're in those right now. But that's also why we need folks like MIA students to be the next generation of leaders and to carry us through this. I mean, I think of it almost as a benefit that you are living through some of the most unprecedented times in international relations, at least since World War II. And this is a chance to learn from it, to see what's going well. Is anything going well? What's not going well is probably better. And be able to learn from that and figure out what can we do better and how can I apply that to whatever career field I'm interested in. You know, this is a chance for you to pick an area of the world that interests you, learn more about it and specialize. We need specialists in multiple places in the world because you're now seeing that those are starting to become more publicly talked about than ever before. We had almost an entire week's worth of an internet cycle because we launched tariffs on an island occupied by penguins. So the world is changing out there and it's starting to trickle down to the general public. That presents a huge opportunity for folks to become SMEs, to speak out, and to provide folks with that ground truth and that actionable information they need to understand what exactly is going on out there. Another piece of advice is, you know, when you're in your field and as things continue to go, just keep your head down and move forward. Try not to let it get to you. It can be a little discouraging. To be very personal with you folks, my organization was one of the ones that received cuts from the recent federal stuff that's going on. So we're all trying to figure out our future because we just had our budget cut. You know, that's something that can very deeply impact you. But it's important to keep your eyes on the mission and again, understand things will work out in the end. If you have to shift careers, you have to shift careers. If you have to shift jobs, that's life. But you need to continue to move forward and understand that, you know, particularly in the international affairs, you're working for something that's bigger than yourself, even bigger than this country, and it's an important goal. There's always going to be speed bumps along the way. Right now, we're living through one of those, one of the biggest ones ever. But it's important to just keep going and keep your eyes on that end goal and understand that you will be able to make a difference in this field. You just need to keep on going.
And just to jump in, it can be very overwhelming, all the different changes every day, every hour. Keep yourself calm and keep yourself focused. Focus on what is actually happening. What can you do about it? You know, stay true to yourself, stay true to your beliefs, advocate for those. You know, don't, my biggest, I guess, advice, especially going into a career of international affairs, make sure your morals align with the company's mission. The last thing you want is to be in a position where you feel like the work you're doing is wrong or isn't really, you know, helping your cause or helping the cause that you want to help with. So just stay true to yourself throughout all this mess that's happening.
That's really good advice. Thank you both. So before I move on to another question, I want to ask the students, are there questions for Tim and Kathleen? You can feel free to put them in the chat, but I would encourage you to unmute, even put your camera on and ask directly. Dylan, go ahead. And then it looks like Jordan has one. We'll start with Dylan. Go ahead, Dylan.
So this is kind of a casual question, but I want some honesty here. So when you were first doing your application process, did you ever fudge the truth a little bit on resumes or cover letters?
Is this recording being shared with the admin at U Albany?
Not widely shared, I promise.
Yeah. I say quantify as much as you can in your resume. Was it 200 or 500 members? You know, was I publishing 2 blogs a week or 1? It depends, you know, like if you have someone, you know, at that company that you either interned at or worked at that might get contacted and ask questions about the resume, you just want to make sure you're dotting your I's and crossing your T's. The last thing you want is to kind of get caught up in a lie, but don't lie.
Right.
On the advice of counsel, I reserve my right to. No, I would say, yeah, don't ever lie on your resume. I have sat on a couple job panels, interviewing for or conducting interviews for positions. It is kind of obvious when you like ask them about a section on the resume and they kind of just look at you and go, I did things and stuff. But it is also important to remember, you can craft the narratives around them. If you were the lead person on your team who is helping with say, developing a tabletop exercise, was your position the lead tabletop exercise planner? Maybe not. But if you're applying for a position that's like that, you can, frame it in such a way that you were the lead tabletop exercise planner for this specific task. It's important to understand the framing of things because that's really how folks see them. It's also important to remember on resumes, especially these days with AI bots and the internet and everything, they are more of a screening thing than anything else right now. When I'm looking at resumes, I'm looking to see if you meet the basic qualifications, and then I'd want to hear more from you during an actual interview. That's where I'm going to ask the questions that ultimately are the determiner. A resume is just checking boxes to make sure you meet those qualifications to even get an interview or a phone screen. So if you're looking for places to stretch the truth a little bit, interviews is probably where you're going to be able to expand upon your experiences in such a way to shed a positive light on yourself.
I'll add on to that too. I'm sure Dylan, part of why Dylan might be asking this and why other students ask me this is the frustrations and they don't have an internship yet. How can they like qualify for future internships without that experience? Which I understand the frustration. One thing I would say to students generally is you focus on your transferable skills too. You're gonna likely have some or hopefully have some sort of experience, whether it's a club leadership experience or a volunteer experience or retail or a part-time job in hospitality, whatever it might be. Those are valuable skills. And so how you're able to, like Tim said, frame them or articulate them in your resume, but particularly in the interview and how that ties to the position. Like there are transferable skills I'm still using 15 years into my career. So when you're dealing with like collaboration or problem solving or communication or leadership, those are just across the board. So I would focus on that too, Dylan. I'm happy to help you with that. I don't know if Kathleen, you had anything to add.
I was just going to say, in terms of cover letters, right? Like, obviously, you are going to tailor it to the specific role you're applying for. I applied for the events role for the organization that I'm at now. In my cover letter, I didn't say I put on corporate events, but I did mention my past experience, helping at open houses and things like that. But at the end of the day, that's not really what they were interested in. It was all the rest of my experience. And I think for me, I really was able to sell myself and, my skill set at that interview. And that's, yeah. So yeah, tailor the cover letter. And stay true to who you are, no need to lie, but enhance.
Mm-hmm. And some students don't even put experiences like working in retail or hospitality, for example. So don't undersell those either, certainly add those on.
Oh yeah, definitely. Like when we have hired folks who have no internship experience, no cybersecurity experience. My last intern was straight out of college, no cyber experience, and now she's an Intel analyst on our team. But yeah, those show that you at least had employment, you were doing something, and I definitely agree with the extracurricular activities. Those speak to you as a person and what you do and what are you doing outside of school to better yourself. Okay, if your degree isn't in cybersecurity, but you have done stuff in cybersecurity, gotten some other certifications or participated in some stuff, that speaks to an interest in the field that's going to, at least in my book, that gets you an interview because it shows you're going above and beyond and you have that interest.
Yeah,
So
absolutely.
sorry, it might be a little off topic, but in terms of resume building, we have the most access ever to courses, to certifications. You can go on LinkedIn and get certified in speech writing or something like that. There's no shortage of those kinds of opportunities. So just be aware that's available to you as well.
That's true. You can take the initiative. The students can do that themselves to gain some of those skills that might be lacking or gaps in skills. Okay, Jordan asks for all panelists, how did you approach building your professional network after graduating? And were there any particular strategies or moments that helped open doors to your current positions? Great question.
I think for me, I really kept in touch with the career development department. At the time, I even post grad, I was asking for help on my resume. So just keeping in touch, you know, that way. But also, I think like as a student, you're able to join young professional organizations at a lower level than if you're not a student. So you can join, you know, like I think like the Center of Foreign Affairs has like a young fellows program or something like that. You know, you can do that. For me, I like to be in person and meet people in person. So any networking events, any any like even virtual discussions, I would always just join, keep in touch with your intern, your past internships, see if they need anything. And you don't even have to be an intern. I remember when I graduated and I came back to the United Nations Joint Sustainable Development Goals Fund, and I was like, hey, listen, I'm still on the job hunt, but like, do you need any help? And of course they need help. You know, a lot of these nonprofits, you can offer your help, and that can always turn into something bigger and better.
Absolutely agree with that. Don't be afraid to approach folks at your current company, nonprofit, whoever you work for, even if they're not in your direct report stack. I found that to be very beneficial. If you're networking with folks at a company event, send a follow-up email to them. I know it sounds kind of cheesy and corny, but it actually does make an impression because you'd be surprised how many folks never bother to follow up. People remember you if you actually make an effort to reach out to them, even if it's literally just to say, hey, it was great to talk to you the other night. Let me know if you're in town again, or something like, something generic. It still makes an impression in folks, and they remember you as the person who cared enough to spend 5 minutes writing them an email, which sets you apart from a lot of people. And keep in touch with folks. Professionally, send them a quick note on the text or Signal or Facebook, however you're connected with them. Even if you don't work anymore, I still keep in touch with folks from my last job because it's good to have folks and let them know you care. You still think of them from time to time because you never know when you're actually going to need to work with them again. I've actually come across folks from my previous employment at my current job that I never thought I would. I was out in Buffalo giving a tabletop exercise, and I ran into a guy that I used to work with out there. It's been years and years since I saw him, but he still remembered me because we keep in touch from time to time, just a simple check-in. Those sorts of things are really beneficial. It's very easy to make an initial contact. It's the follow-up that's really going to set you apart from so many folks.
Yeah, absolutely. I just had dinner with my first boss recently, so it's always nice to stay in touch. I'll just add on to that too. Some students are, I don't want to say hesitant, but you have to do an internship for the program, for the MIA program, and that's a great opportunity to network. You can have conversations with people in different departments just to learn about what they do, build those, contacts. But some students are hesitant to ask their supervisors if there's future internship opportunities or job opportunities. And I would just tell students, don't hesitate to ask that. It just shows you're invested and you care. And the worst that can happen is they say, we don't have any opportunities right now, but check back at a later date. So those, take advantage of the internship when you're in it too, for sure.
Exactly. And just to mention as well, I'd be remiss if I didn't mention LinkedIn. Honestly, get started on it now. I personally use it every day. I check it all the time. I use it as a tool for building my network. And I've started posting after my networking receptions. I've started tagging our members. We had an event in Rockefeller Center with Jaguar Land Rover who brought in Queen Elizabeth's, military vehicles. I posted that all over LinkedIn. I tagged everybody. Don't be afraid, really highlight yourself, sell yourself that way too. It's a great way to build your network. Here and especially in international affairs, it's a great way to get familiar with different companies that are maybe running in the same sector, the same spaces. So definitely recommend LinkedIn.
No, that's a very good point. I kind of want to ask a follow-up piggyback question on that. And certainly students, if you have questions, get them prepared. We have plenty of time. I have students sometimes telling me LinkedIn feels overwhelming to get started. Like, how do I get started? It feels overwhelming. And obviously we have tips and advice for them, but I just kind of want to hear your guys' perspective. I know it's a little bit of a loaded question, but what would you say? What are your thoughts on that in terms of how they can get started with LinkedIn and utilize it to their advantage?
I definitely, LinkedIn's great because they have these little functions for your profile pictures that say if you're open to work, definitely make sure you have that on there. It could be overwhelming, right? Which companies do you add? I add everybody. I see someone at the Buffalo Bills and I'm like the director of corporate sponsorships, even though I'm not gonna probably end up getting a client out of that. It's still interesting to see their work. You know, I'm a Go Bills fan. But so yeah, really just follow, you know, the organizations that you have an interest in now. Friend the people that have roles that sound interesting to you, message them. Most of the time, people are very happy to hop on a quick Zoom call to give you, people love to talk about themselves. So you know, a lot of people in these
That all the
positions would
time.
be, exactly. They'd be very happy for 10, 15, 20 minutes to talk about their career development, their career path. You might not be able to get a job out of it, but then again, it's another contact that you have in your arsenal. So I think definitely start following organizations and you can see stuff that they post. It could be overwhelming and intimidating to put a post on LinkedIn. There's no shame in being like, hi, everyone, my name is this. I've recently graduated with, you know, this degree. This is the kind of work that I'm open to. And you can also follow a lot of recruiters on LinkedIn too that will constantly have kind of job postings and threads where you can just click on the link right there. So definitely recruiters, organizations that interest you and people that either are in the roles that you want or interested in learning more about for sure.
I mean, if you're feeling overwhelmed on LinkedIn, just always start small. Start with your current network, the folks you go to school with. If they're on LinkedIn, folks at your company, or following companies that you happen to be interested in. Maybe you've seen them on job postings. Maybe you're just a fan of their work in general. The one note of caution I would add here is just always remember, especially in this field in international affairs, there are going to be bad actors out there that are going to look to exploit LinkedIn in particular. We get people trying to impersonate our company all the time, tunneling their way into our accounts or trying to friend us because they're interested in our work. For example, I work on the intelligence team, so we have to be cognizant of the fact that some of the people that we're trying to stop are trying to stop us, in fact. So always just exercise some level of caution on there, particularly when accepting requests from people you don't know. I know I sound like a very different person, but it is true. You are going to see that, particularly as you rise up in any organization. You're going to become a target for folks on any level of social media. So just always remember what you're posting there. I do not ever post on LinkedIn. I am on there. I never post on there at all. It's my own personal choice. I'm not telling you to do that. I'm not telling you not to do that. Everybody has their level of comfort with their profile. Just again, remember what you post on there is going to be seen. Even if your profile is private, I am telling you at some point in your career, somebody is going to get a screenshot of it. That's just a given in the world we live in. Trust me, I work in cybersecurity. I know these things. And when you're sending your LinkedIn off to recruiters on applications and things like that, they are going to look at it and they will judge you for what is on there. So just always remember that with what you're doing there and with any social media in general. If you're overwhelmed with it, it's not a requirement by any means. It's a nice tool to have. It's a great thing to keep an eye on the job market, on what organizations are doing. But if it's something you're truly not comfortable with, there's absolutely no requirement to have one.
That's a very good point about digital footprint. That just is the way it is these days. I'm similar to you, Tim. I don't post as much. I'll just add there's other ways to engage students. You can also like things, you can reshare things of that nature. But yeah, these are all really good points about LinkedIn. So I get that question a lot, the LinkedIn overwhelming nature of it initially. So students, any more questions? Again, take advantage of this opportunity. And you can feel free to put it in the chat. I know my students are gonna have questions because they were supposed to come prepared with questions, not to put them on the spot, but there's gotta be one or two more out there. Put it in the chat, you can unmute. I can ask one or two more, but I'd love for the students to engage. All right, I'll ask one while you guys are thinking of that, but I really would encourage you to ask. I'll ask this. I have two more really. I'll go close with that one, but I'll say with this one, two things. We talked about resume, LinkedIn, but the interview process can be daunting too. So, you know, what advice would you have for students in the interview process? Looks like Jordan has another question. We'll get to you right after this. So what advice would you have for students in the interview process, and how can they stand out, especially in this competitive market and with international affairs being like relatively niche? Like, how can they stand out in that process and set themselves apart, would you say?
Definitely be as familiar as you can with the company you're interviewing with,
Mm-hmm.
and make it a point to have questions for your interviewer. You always want to ask a question, even if it's, you know, what does the work culture look like? What does a typical day in my role look like? You can even ask about time off or opportunities for growth. I think that's a great question to ask too. You know, in a year from now, what can my position look like? Things like that. Definitely come prepared with. It can be very overwhelming when you're preparing for an interview. I remember I had a lot of interviews virtually and my hands would always be shaking. But there's really no need, because you are confident, you are smart, you are, you know, capable of speaking to your skill set. Make a list, you know, what are things that you really are proud of? Have you done any projects? Have you had an internship where you were able to deliver something really positive? You know, pick a few good things to really speak to, good practical examples of your work. Of course, they're going to ask questions. You can only predict which questions they will ask. Take a moment. If you need a moment, just say, let me think about that for a second. You know, really take initiative of the interview, really take control of it. Make it what you want. Ask as many questions as you want. And also, if you don't have the answer, just say, oh, you know, maybe I haven't had experience with that yet, but I'd really like to learn. It's all about framing and the way that you come across. You know, fake it till you make it. My hands are shaking, but I'm always gonna fake the confidence. So that's my biggest advice.
Be honest in your interviews. Really to emphasize what Kathleen just said. Don't try and make up something if you genuinely don't know. If it's like a factoid based question, don't guess, just say you don't know. We ended up hiring somebody, our last analyst we hired him almost specifically because in the interview, he actually had the courage to look us and go, I have no idea what you just asked me, and I have no idea how to answer that. And we hired him because unlike the other person who tried to answer it and got it completely wrong, but wrong with confidence, we hired him because he was honest with us about what he knew and what he didn't. Because one of the questions you're almost always going to get is, you know, what do you do when you encounter a situation if you don't know the answer to something? And if the answer you're demonstrating in an interview is lie to your face, they're going to see through that and they're not going to hire you. Really practice those elevator pitches. I know that was something the MIA program emphasized when I was there. I assume they still do. Those are super valuable. That was one of the biggest things I took from the preparation of the MIA program. I am terrible about talking about myself, as I just butcher that sentence completely. I'm terrible at talking about myself. It makes me wildly uncomfortable. Force yourself to do that, but condense it down and make it stand out, because those opening few moments when you get that question, you know, so tell us about yourself. What do you like to do for fun? If you sit there and kind of stammer through that you like doing the internets and also give me a job, it's going to leave a lasting first impression. They really do matter. So those opening minutes, that's where you can stand out by showing you cared enough about this position to practice that elevator pitch. You know, absolutely research the company, understand or organization or whoever you're going for, and understand what it is they do. Because if you demonstrate that you don't actually know what it is they do, you're not getting another interview, you're not getting the position. So take the time, do the research, show that you're actually interested in what they're doing. Absolutely, those follow-up questions are important. Even if you already know the answer to them, just ask it anyway, because if you don't have questions, I'm going to assume you don't actually care about the job. And cameras, I know that's something in the remote field. There are many thoughts about camera on, camera off. I encourage camera on for interviews. Some places do mandate it these days, especially with ChatGPT and everything out there. But I would encourage folks to have it on anyway. Again, it's a level of standing out. That's a way to make yourself stand out. Some folks don't want it on. Putting it on shows a level of at least commitment or interest in it that makes folks remember you. It's a lot easier to also convey emotions and interest when you're talking with your camera on, as opposed to just being a voice on the other end of the phone. Don't hesitate to follow up. Those follow-up emails or anything afterwards, those again leave a lasting impression. Like I was talking about with maintaining your professional network and taking the 5 minutes to send an email, send a thank you email after your interview. If you don't actually have the contact information for the people that interviewed you, email your recruiter, email whoever your point of contact was, ask them to thank those people. It sounds like a very small thing. I am telling you from personal experience, it makes you stand out, because those are the people that actually want the job, that they take 30 seconds and write an email that says, thanks so much for taking the time to interview me today. I look forward to hearing from you. That's all it has to be, a very short email. But it means the world to some of these folks, because a lot of folks are very busy. They have to take time out of their day, which puts them further behind on their own work, to be able to interview you for a position, which means they're probably working late, may or may not have had to do that in my world. So seeing somebody actually appreciate you taking the time to talk to them, that really does mean a lot, and that can make you stand out in a field of a lot of applicants.
Absolutely. All very good points. I've also had students, I'll just add, and then we have 2 more student questions and then we'll start to wrap up. I've had students when I've been on interview committees ask me to restate the question. Don't hesitate to do that too. If maybe you're nervous, like Kathleen said, you didn't hear it, it's okay. It's actually, to me, it looks good if you're trying to answer the question accurately and asking me to restate it so I can be clear. So that's another little tidbit. So we have another question from Jordan. Great question here. He says, looking back, is there anything you wish you had done differently during your time in the MIA program, whether related to internships, networking, coursework, that would have better prepared you for your current role?
I'll be honest, I don't think anything could have prepared me for the role I'm in now. I am basically in sales. I have 0 sales experience and I don't really like sales, but the way that I frame it is, people and relationship building, right? So yeah, I think relationship building in any role that you go to is really important. In terms of, internships, I will say I think I stayed a little too long with the United Nations Joint Sustainable Development Goals Fund, just because I was, at the UN, and I really wanted it to materialize in a full-time position. With organizations like that, it's not possible. I just thought I might be special. Hoping for the best, but it was still great to continue working and get to work and kind of still be involved that way. But I could have probably done another internship that was probably paid and probably had a better opportunity at the end of it. So don't be afraid to move on from a current position just because you're hoping that it'll turn into something. Most of the times, companies or bosses, if they really want you to stay, you will know. And if you're ready to walk out the door and they're like, see ya, take that and run with it, get to the next best opportunity. So, I've been in my role for 3 years now. I'm getting to the point where I'm seeing maybe I do want a little shift in my role. So I've stayed here for 3 years because I obviously wanted to get from coordinator to senior manager. But, that could be in a few months, it could be in a few years. Just really, you gotta think about what works for you. Is it about the money? Is it about the work? Is it about the experience? It's all those things, and you kind of have to leverage them all together. But yeah.
I wish I had paid more attention in economics class because I've had to learn a lot about tariffs the last few weeks. Um, no, I would say that I definitely agree with the staying at the internships. I think for me, a follow on to that would be when I was considering careers, I had a very Albany centric frame of mind that I only ever really thought about jobs in Albany. Um, Obviously, it was a little bit of a different world back then. But I would encourage folks, as you're thinking about where to go after school, um, think a little bit broader. The world has so many jobs these days, so many places are still remote, that it's a great opportunity to test some things out, especially early on in your career. That's a great opportunity to maybe try something out, maybe stretch yourself just a little bit further than you would normally to see if something works. I definitely agree with the staying at the internship. I would also agree I stayed at mine too long, which then resulted in a job, which then resulted in the job going away. So don't be afraid to do something where you want to shift. You can always come back, especially if you did a great job as an intern. They're going to want you back if you set yourself apart and if you did a good job. And no one's going to fault you for wanting to have an internship somewhere else. Some cases they may actually support that because it gets you experience somewhere else, and then they can steal you right back from them and get a better employee. So, really don't be afraid to broaden your horizons and spread out like that.
Absolutely. So we have one more student question here. It kind of is, you both have kind of just touched on this in the previous question. So I'll just say, is there anything you want to add to this? Favor Joy said, what are some roles you started in? Like, where did you start out in your career and what really set you up for where you are now? So I know you just talked about it, Tim, a little bit, your internship leading into a job in this, and Kathleen talking about her years of experience in her current position. But is there anything you guys want to add to that?
I guess, the role will be kind of set and structured and predetermined, but don't be afraid to try and advocate like, oh, is there anything else that I could be doing? I remember when I started my position here, I was really interested in getting involved with the policy team. That's kind of where I wanted to be. And I was just able to kind of work with the chief policy and trade officer and offer my help in, getting out these monthly updates to members. So you can do that. I tend to specialize in SMEs because I like working with SMEs. I like working with nonprofits. I work with a lot of creative industries. I was able to recruit the Met Opera to join my company, which is a little, weird, but I got them to join, so even though you're going into a role, you can kind of, depending on the role, shape it to what you want it to be.
Mm-hmm.
I would actually go back further than my first internship, and I would go to my job in the mail room in college, which actually set me up for what I have now. Because part of that job was dealing with very angry people who were very upset that their package did not arrive on time, and they took it out on me. I didn't work for the post office. I was just a person staffing a mailroom full of boxes. But actually understanding how to handle that level of confrontation set me up real well for both of my jobs, where I was dealing with some personalities. In my current role, when you're on a phone call with somebody whose network is down because it got hit with ransomware and they're screaming at you because it's somehow your fault, even though you're the one they called to fix it, that that early experience with that helped set me up for understanding how to have that level of engagement with somebody and not fly off the handle myself when I'm getting yelled at. So if you have experience as a waiter or anything like that, don't discount that, because those skills can really be applicable, especially in this world of international relations where everyone's just a little angrier than they used to be. To an earlier question about framing on resumes and things like that, that's another potential avenue right there. Conflict resolution, something like that. They really can play a role no matter where you go.
Excellent. So we are over that 5:30 mark, so I'll just ask a final question here and then we can kind of close it out. So just broadly, any final tips or advice that you would have for the students? And maybe what are some ways, or what would, if the students wanted to stay in touch or connect in the future or learn about potential opportunities with your organization, what might be the best way for them to do so?
Yeah, I would just say, really take advantage of what you have at Albany, whether it's in person or virtual. Just know that, your professors and staff are there to help you. They want you to do well. They want you to find the jobs and internships you want. So really take advantage of that. Don't be afraid to reach out to me or Tim. I'm very happy to answer any questions. I know that sometimes it could be a little difficult, regardless if you're in the MAA program or not, just, being a human at this time, happy to just connect. You can follow me on LinkedIn. I can drop it in the chat. I can also drop my email. But definitely stay in touch. And yeah, good luck, everyone.
I agree. I'll also drop my email in the chat. Yeah, those networks you build, especially early on, don't underestimate them. Keep them going. You will regret it later in life if you don't keep those going and you're looking back for an opportunity. I did see one last question about security field international opportunities. Yes, there are definitely opportunities in the international field for security. There are a lot of organizations that have global reach. For example, some of the private sector companies like CrowdStrike or FireEye, especially in the cyber field, they work with countries around the globe. They have offices around the globe as well. So definitely an opportunity there where understanding international relations and how everything works together can really make you stand out with security and things like that. But last thoughts here, these are trying times, but remember that we're going to get through them all. And it's important to just keep moving forward, learn everything you can, get those experiences now while you can, and take what you can from the times we're in. There's a lot to learn out there. There's a lot to see what's going on. And it's important to not just let that pass you by, but to really take advantage of it in any way so that you can benefit from it and that you can take those experiences and benefit, professionally and have the world benefit from those as well. So happy to keep in touch with folks. I'll put my email in the chat as well. And thanks all.
Amazing. I'll make sure that the students who attended an RSVP receive that as well to connect. We appreciate that. So with that, we'll close out the panel. I will say I did hear from Erin. Unfortunately, she just had some technical issues. She apologizes. She said she'll be happy to share written responses to the questions. So I'll be happy to share that with my class or any students who reach out. Hopefully we'll have her on a future panel too with less technical issues. Technology never works when you want it to, unfortunately. Right at the moment you need it to too. It's a great time.
Can confirm it's always like that.
Yeah, I was joining this and my Zoom had to update. So
no, right when you get on, it's like, let's do an update.
Yep.
So I want to say thank you so much to our panelists. This was a phenomenal panel. My colleague Christina Cardona had to hop off. She said it was great. She sends her thanks as well. And thank you to the students for being here. This is a great chance, to learn and hear and connect and network. So certainly thank you for coming, and I'm happy to answer any questions as well. So with that, I'll go ahead, I'll stop the recording and start to